We grow when we give.
We grow when we give.
We grow when we give.
Nosotros crecemos cuando damos.
We grow when we give.
与えるとき成長する。
We grow when we give.
Welcome to ROG, Return on Generosity, a podcast celebrating generosity at work. Not financial giving, giving valuable time, alternative perspectives, and genuine collaboration. Welcome to ROG. This is part one of a 6-part series on working genius. Work is a broad term that applies to almost every part of our lives, even beyond what we formally refer to as jobs. The majority of our waking hours involve some kind of work. The Table Group, founded by Pat Lencioni, discovered that there are 6 types of work. These 6 are required whether you're working on launching a product, organizing a nonprofit, or planning a vacation. The Working Genius model explains the 6 types of work and the order of those stages. Each of us have a God-given ability to get joy and energy from 2 of those types of work. And because we love that kind of work, we usually gravitate toward it and we're pretty good at it. Our special guest today is Julie Dobbins, Director of Operations at the Table Group. Today's episode will focus on wonder. Welcome to ROG, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So let's talk about this genius of wonder. What is it?
Wonder. So it's funny that you asked that because wonder is probably one of the geniuses of the 6 types, and I know we'll cover all 6, that can feel the most intangible. So a lot of people, when they took the Working Genius the first time, they thought, I didn't even know that was a gift. I didn't know that was even a type of work, right? Because wonder is really about asking questions. It's about pondering and really seeing the big picture, seeing what's possible, looking at untapped potential, the need for improvement or for change in an industry or an environment or on a team or a project, any of those different things.
Awesome. And so because it's something that's intangible, do people who have this genius not know that it's a genius?
A lot of people have said, I didn't even realize that was a genius. There's so many times I've felt like, all of my questions or the fact that I really liked to kind of think big picture and step back and look at the environment, that there wasn't time for that it wasn't valued on teams because it just felt like I was questioning everything all the time. But we would say that, any type of new endeavor or creation of a plan or any product, it actually starts with wonder. It starts with the question, the possibility, the pondering. And so it's the first stage of work.
Yeah, that's so helpful to know because some of these are internal and not as, I would say, praiseworthy or obvious, perhaps is a better word to say. So it's interesting to hear you say that. And for teams who benefit from these, from individuals on the team who have wonder, what are some of the ways that those individuals contribute to a team?
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to mention is, you had just talked about that it can either feel intangible or, maybe people didn't even realize it was a high value. And so that's why we actually call it the 6 types of working genius, because each of these is extremely valuable. There's not one that's more important than another when getting work done or for people on a team, right? The easiest one probably could be like the inventor, which I know that's not what the genius we're talking about at the moment, but it's coming up with a new idea or coming up with a new innovative invention or something that could feel really tangible, like, oh, that person's a genius. But all of these types of work are important for a team. They're important for work to get done, and they're equally valuable. And so the wonderer, the person who loves to think about possibilities and ask questions is really important. And so we hope that people, when they take the assessment or they understand that about themselves or about people on their team who have this genius, that they can see the value and tap into that because it's really important.
So when wonder is well represented on a team, what does that look like?
Yeah. So when teams, whether it's they have someone on the team who has wonder as a genius, and so they kind of pose the questions or they create space to think about possibilities, or it's just a team who says, we know that this is an important stage of work. What this looks like is really taking time to kind of step back. It's looking at the environment. It's taking a moment to really think about what's possible. What could we be missing? What's happening around us? And so what that can look like is, whether it's taking some time to pause, taking some time to ask questions, taking some time to think outside the box. And so it can feel a little bit for teams who don't have this, like, oh my gosh, this isn't very productive. But it's actually so important for teams as they're figuring out the direction that they're going, that they're making sure that they're solving the right problems, right? What's the problem to solve? Because if you don't think about what's possible, if you don't ask a couple of questions and ask the right questions, you could be solving for something that's really not actually going to be that helpful to your team in the long term and in the future.
Totally. There's an Albert Einstein quote that rings true on this one. And he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes thinking about what questions to ask or what problem am I solving. So this is like the wonder. It's like, what problem are we solving here?
Yeah.
And we're going to ask all of those questions. So what happens if a team does not have wonder represented or not well represented?
So teams that lack wonder, they can find themselves kind of failing to identify new opportunities or problems, or they're not necessarily looking at potential. And it can feel like they maybe lack curiosity or lack concern for unmet needs.
Excellent. So when people have this genius and they're being self-aware of this is part of what makes me me, this is how I can contribute, what do they need to be aware of in order to be responsive or empathetic towards the others in the room?
Yeah. So for people with the genius of wonder, sometimes the simplest thing can just be to say, hey, I'm kind of wondering right now. I have a couple questions that I want to ask. So whether it's kind of declaring, hey, maybe this isn't the time for it, but this is where my mind is going, or these are the questions that I have. So just framing up, I'm wondering. When you share that language, it's helpful to know, okay, that's what we're doing right now. So that's one thing. And then the next thing is just really kind of reading the room, and this is true for every genius, is this what the work requires? So the question that we ask all the time is, what does the work require? If the work requires right now for us all to, we're trying to get a project across the finish line, we need to wrap things up, it may not be the time and the space to ask a bunch of questions about what's possible or what we should do next or what we're missing. And so really asking, what does the work require? And if it requires the wondering, show up, contribute. And if it doesn't, it might be a time and a space to regulate a little bit. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it can be something you write down and revisit, or just wait till a different time.
Ah, beautiful. So for those of you who have the genius of wonder, please stay curious, keep asking your questions, and share your genius generously. Thank you for joining me, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to ROG, Return on Generosity Podcast. Please help us grow by subscribing and reviewing us on your favorite podcast player. And for more information, visit bridgebetween.com. We grow when we give.
우리는 나누면서 성숙합니다.
We grow when we give.
On rayonne quand on donne.
We grow when we give.